Three American Christians held in North Korea as prisoners are on their way home. Kim Dong-chul, Tony Kim, and Kim Hak-song are scheduled to arrive at Andrews Air Force Base tomorrow at 2 a.m. President Trump tweeted that he'll be at the airport to welcome the men back home. Joining me to discuss the release of the three men and what it means for the upcoming U.S.-North Korea summit is CBN's Chief International Correspondent Gary Lane here in the studio in Virginia Beach, and from Washington, D.C., CBN's White House correspondent Ben Kennedy. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the show. Gary, let me begin with you. Can you give us a quick brief on who these three men and why the North Koreans arrested them in the first place?
Well, George, you mentioned the three. I'll mention them again. I want to make sure I get this right. Kim Hong-song, Tony Kim, and Kim Dong-chul. Now, the North Koreans always have this tendency to take people, Americans, they love taking Americans, you know that. Remember in the past others who've been taken, and for no reason really, but they always charge them with hostile acts against the regime, or they say they've been spying against the regime, and then they use them as bargaining chips, as leverage to get what they want from the United States. So this is an old tactic. These men were missionaries, humanitarian workers, and so forth. They were taken, one in 2015, I think the others within about a year, George. But this is nothing new, but we're glad to see that they're finally out.
A real quick question, Gary. Does it make a difference that all three men were ethnic Koreans, you know, with all the back and forth and negotiations between South Korea and North Korea? Do you think the fact that these three men were ethnic Koreans that perhaps helped their situation?
Well, I don't know if that helped or not. Maybe that led to them being taken to begin with because they had Korean ancestry or heritage, and that would be a factor in negotiating, but also I think mainly, George, the fact that they were American. They are that's the bargaining chip. That's what they were looking for.
Ben, let me go to you, sir, at the White House. You know, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo helped secure their release. How crucial was his role in all of this?
Well, George, I think he played a crucial role in this. You have to realize this is Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's second meeting in North Korea. The first time he was just the CIA director, and that kind of launched this possible release of three Americans. And then he touched down in North Korea yesterday, and it's not a coincidence that within a matter of a couple hours, the three Americans were set free. And in fact, they're on a plane bound for the U.S., set to land here at about 2 a.m. President Trump says he will be there to greet them as they get off the tarmac. So you bet Secretary of State Mike Pompeo did play a very big role in this release.
Yeah, if only to be a fly in that aircraft that is heading back home. Great news for all three families involved. Gary, the White House has insisted from the very beginning that the men's freedom was key to testing North Korea's commitment to any future talks between our two nations, right? I mean, that has been key for this administration.
Well, George, as you know, you can't negotiate with someone who's holding your people. How are you going to talk to them? What do you talk to them? You ignore that they're holding American citizens in their prisons while you're talking about denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula? No, it's got to be all together. It has to be part of a package deal. So to show goodwill, look, if we're going to continue these talks, you've got the president coming, you've got to show goodwill. So Un said, okay, we'll release them.
Ben, shortly before seeing the American, Secretary Pompeo met with North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un, reportedly for about 90 minutes, along with several other top officials. Pompeo reportedly told them that if the regime gives up their nuclear weapons, North Korea can, quote, have all the opportunities your people so richly deserve. That's a statement from Mike Pompeo. Is it your sense that the White House there believes North Korea is willing to negotiate away its crown jewels, its nuclear weapons, in exchange for peace on the Korean Peninsula?
Well, George, President Trump is definitely hopeful. I mean, so far the signs are indicating that North Korea is willing to deal. I mean, as Gary was talking about earlier, they stopped the missile tests. Three Americans are now released. So they are making some, I guess, what we could call peace offerings ahead of this historic summit with President Trump and Kim Jong-un. Whether or not it'll happen is the big question. We've heard the president say time and time again, look, I'll go into this meeting, but if denuclearization is not on the table, I'll walk out. So President Trump really is no nonsense when dealing with North Korea.
Gary, one of the officials at this meeting, his name was Kim Dong-chul. He's a former North Korean intelligence officer. He reportedly told Pompeo that his country is now concentrating all its energy on the economic progress of the country. Is it your sense that North Korea is finally ready to come in from the cold, so to speak?
No, I just think they want to reap more benefits from an economic package, a deal with the United States and the West that will benefit them. I mean, think about this, George. Their GDP is only about $12 billion a year, while in South Korea, their GDP is a $1.5 trillion. I mean, think of that comparatively. So their economy is in shambles. So yes, they need to benefit. They need to build up their economy. But at the same time, they're building missiles. They're building their military. So it's a matter of priorities. But yes, they would like to see economic benefit from some deal with the United States, as they have in the past with the Bushes and the Clintons.
Yeah. What would success look like from Pyongyang's point of view?
Well, success for them is different than it is for the United States. Of course, for the North Koreans, success would be more benefits, more concessions from the West and the United States, like we have done in the past. Give them money, give them trade, so they can build up their economy, have a good life for the leadership, not necessarily for the people. That's what it is for them. And of course, they would like to see the 29,000 American troops withdraw from South Korea. Trump's already said, nope, that's not on the table. That's what they'd like to see. Of course, what we'd like to see is them to abandon their nuclear program altogether and not to start it up again like they have been in the past, like they have done in the past.
Yeah,
George.
and I think, Ben, that's a question to you as well. What would success look like from the folks behind you in that building?
Well, George, one word: denuclearization. We've asked President Trump this several times. Well, what does that mean? Essentially, the technology, the missiles, anything related to a nuclearized program is removed, is taken away from North Korea. If that does not happen, according to President Trump, it will not be a successful meeting.
Yeah. Gary, we are talking about the release of these 3 American Christians. Speaking of Christians, how are North Korean Christians reacting to the flurry of fast-moving developments?
Well, like everyone else in North Korea, they are hopeful but doubtful. I mean, they're skeptical. They haven't reaped any benefits from this talk. They see the propaganda that they hear on their national television, but so far they're in the same condition they have been for years. About 30,000 Christians in prison in the gulag there, left to die. And if you're caught with a Bible, you may die. At the very least, you'll be thrown into prison. So life is very difficult for Christians there. We need to continue to pray for them, George, but they've noticed no difference whatsoever.
Yeah. Ben, North Korea, as you know, and all of our viewers know, is the worst place in the world for Christians. Any chance that's going to change with a possible opening and this possible summit between the 2 leaders?
Well, George, I think President Trump sure hopes so. To give an example, recently here at the White House, Nigeria's president was here, and President Trump said that they need to do more. The African countries need to do more for people of faith. Churches are being burned. Christians are being murdered, tortured, and persecuted. So I do believe that will be one of the topics he plans to talk about with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. President Trump continues to turn to his faith, and I don't think that'll change when he heads over to North Korea.